Good evening. I'm Josh Hager, President of the Bismarck School Board. It's 5:15 on Monday, February 9th. I call this meeting to order. Welcome to those of you who are joining us both here and also online. You can find our agenda and follow along online on the School Boards tab at bismarckschools.org. Dr. Scher, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hager?
Here.
Mr. Eastgate?
Here.
Mr. Lee?
Here.
Mrs. Peterson?
Here.
Ms. Presky?
Here.
Dr. Frosnow, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1C, BPS Mission, Vision, and Values. The BPS vision is to empower every learner to thrive. The BPS vision states, together, our strong relationships build inclusive, collaborative, and innovative environments that create agency and inspire a passion for learning, excellence, and discovery. BPS values are inclusion, excellence, innovation, leadership. You'll also find a link in the agenda to the BPS strategic plan. Item 2 is to adopt the agenda. What are the wishes of the board?
I move we adopt the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Dr. Scher.
Eastgate?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
Presky?
Yes.
Hager?
Yes. Takes us down to item 3, focus on success, Aspire.
Good evening, board members. Nice to see all of you. Tonight we have some information about our literacy training for secondary teachers, and then I would like to bring up to the podium Miss Rachel Schaffner, who will introduce our teachers tonight. Hi, Rachel.
There, it's on. Thank you for having us here tonight. Tonight's focus on success is based around secondary literacy. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the Aspire program that several of our BPS educators and other members of BPS engaged in. So kind of a description of the program: with 85% of public curriculum on average being delivered through text, literacy remains foundational to success across academic disciplines. Aspire's supported educators in embedding literacy best practices into instruction, enabling students in upper elementary, middle, and high school to read, think, and communicate effectively across all subjects. This is based on the science of reading, and it's a professional learning solution designed to meet the needs of all educators working with adolescent learners, from content area teachers to ELA educators to interventionists, instructional leaders, and it provides scaffolded, research-driven professional learning. So that's kind of an overview of the course, and now I'm going to get into what it specifically looked like at BPS. So part of our purpose of having this BPS cohort was to increase knowledge of literacy acquisition, consider the implications and what this could look like at the secondary level, identify implementation and application opportunities. So we in total had 19 participants, 8 teachers, 3 instructional coaches, 2 administrators, 2 coordinators, and 4 LDI members from across the secondary portion of our district. The contents represented were ELA, science, math, social studies, special education, EL, AVID, and Indigenous education. And the teachers with us tonight to discuss further about their learning and what they have implemented are Emily Todd and Brianna Sorrells from Century, and they will share with us their learning and classroom application. I would also like to thank Mary Palmer from Century High School. She is also one of the ELA portfolio holders for being here tonight.
President Hager and school board members, thank you for inviting us to speak tonight. I'm Emily Todd, and I'm here with Brianna Sorrells to discuss literacy at the secondary level. Last spring, we participated in the Aspire literacy modules as presented by Mrs. Schaffner, and although there were many takeaways, we agreed that the most thought-provoking piece was the development of strategies to improve all students' literacy.
Aspire identifies 3 stages of reading development. Grades K through 3 are learning to read and developing fluency, decoding skills, basic comprehension, vocab skills. Grades 4 through 9 are reading to learn, so that involves using those earlier skills to acquire knowledge and think critically. And finally, grades 10 through 12 should be reading widely, synthesizing information, and reading difficult texts. But what we're finding is that students at the high school level are often still working on some of those learning to read skills, and some students struggle with vocabulary, with stamina, and with speed, with finding main ideas, and with overall comprehension. And so our guiding question has become, how do we support secondary students when they need to read to learn, but they're still learning to read?
So a little bit of background about us. In order to work on pushing literacy across content areas, 2 years ago we created a class at Century called Global Literature and Culture. And it meets the standards of 9th grade English and 9th grade Global Studies. The goal is just to blend them together. So we noticed that students were struggling to connect content as they moved from class to class. They don't connect themes. They were struggling to connect information. And so we began brainstorming a way to start to close that gap for them. And so, like, for example, how can we get them to see the themes of Renaissance life while they're reading Romeo and Juliet and not viewing them as 2 different chunks of information? So that's just one unit. There's another unit, for example, on the screen. That's the one we're in now, so World War I, and then studying like the dark side of human nature. Our goal in this course is to naturally blend stories they are reading with the era of history in which they come from. And through this, we're finding that students have more access to vocabulary and the reading and writing process, both what that looks like in history and what that looks like in English.
One of the focuses of our course is improving student vocabulary. Aspire research shows that students need to know 90 to 95% of the words in a text before they can actually comprehend the material. All of the classes at Century have incorporated English classes at Century have incorporated a vocabulary program in order to help students increase their vocabulary. It requires students to learn the meanings of morphemes and word parts and apply that knowledge to other unknown words. Once students learn the word part, we then encourage them to use the words in context, and then we practice the words with both global studies content and English content for added repetition and application. On the screen, there's an example of one of the slides that students would experience. So if they learn the word part cast means to fall, they should be able to predict and apply that knowledge to other unknown words rather than just learning one particular word like the word casualty. Ultimately, that's our vocabulary goal, to provide students with the skills to access new vocabulary across the content areas, not just in our English class or our global classes.
Okay, so moving beyond vocabulary, just getting students to engage with a text, in particular a longer text that they typically would see in high school as they transition from middle school. And we've come to notice that students don't do well when you hand them something and say, read this, and then that's all. And so Aspire has reading in stages that focus on what you do in pre-reading, so before students read, during reading, and after reading. And so pre-reading strategies would take place before students read a text. The goals of a pre-reading strategy are to activate any prior knowledge, provide context to the story or the historical document they're going to read, and then most importantly, giving them a purpose for why they're reading it. So what they're looking for when they're reading. As students begin to read, we often give them a task to do while they're reading. So whether that's a graphic organizer, whether that's annotation, whether that's vocabulary, mark confusion, mark questions. What are they doing when they're reading? We found this helps with student focus, because if they're not doing something physically, they struggle to do something in their brain. And then after students have finished reading, they're asked to reflect, summarize, analyze. And although their task isn't until they've finished reading, it's really important, we've learned, that they know the task during the pre-reading phase, so they know like what their ultimate goal, what their ultimate purpose is come the end of their reading.
Examples of pre-reading, during reading, and after reading strategies are up on, through the English lens at least, are up on the screen right now. So on the upper left, there's some pre-reading questions, and this is one strategy just asking students to activate prior knowledge. about traditions for this particular story, and then they can make predictions about what they're going to read before they even access the text. Another example up on the screen is for the Raven poem, and that's a during reading strategy where they're annotating the text. And like Emily said, we give them specific tasks before they start annotating so they know exactly what they should be looking for. So in this case, they were summarizing each stanza and then marking different examples of Gothic literature and Edgar Allan Poe's writing. And then the bottom item is an example of a post-reading task. So this is what they need to prepare for as they're reading. So they'll take what they've read, they'll answer some questions about it in preparation to talk about it in a Socratic seminar. The seminar is going to ask students to combine different stories that they've read, combine elements of history, since we are global and English combined, and actually talk about it using textual evidence from what they've read.
And then just some examples so you can kind of see it through the history lens. Because I know a lot of people view English or literacy as an English thing, and we're really trying to make sure that students see it as an all content areas thing. And so before diving into World War I, students engaged in pre-reading strategies about overall themes. And so they were asked questions about like what makes a country the most powerful and things like that, or is blind loyalty a good quality or a bad quality? And so just getting them to see the themes the world is experiencing, but maybe at a more, like they can relate to it in their life a little bit more. These questions often have no perfect answer. They're just starting to get students to brainstorm what's coming. On the bottom left, you can see an example of student annotation. So that's just a reading in terms of what caused World War I. And so they're reading for basic summary, understanding, comprehension, as well as vocabulary. So terms like what is an assassination? How is that different from just a killing of someone? And things like that. In the upper right, that's a primary source reading, so that's straight from history. They're looking at what the leaders of the time said in terms of causes of World War I, so that when you can see the student is summarizing a little bit more and taking those chunks of information. And then on the bottom is a post-reading strategy, so after we learned all the causes of war, how can they start to summarize that chunk of information? And then we also have students like reflect kind of big picture on here are the things you should know and should be in your paragraph, so they can kind of self-gauge their understanding.
The final element of literacy that we work to address in our class in order to improve student literacy overall is writing. Aspire states that researchers have found that when students write in content areas beyond the ELA classroom, they're more likely to retain and interpret content on a deeper level. So we guide students through three main processes for writing: planning, drafting, and revising. The planning phase involves using graphic organizers, writing thesis statements, writing topic sentences. The drafting process requires them to then put this into a cohesive piece of writing. And then finally, students will receive feedback that might be from their peers, that might be from me, that might be from both. And then they revise their writings to make improvements and to make them better each time. The historical essay prompt on this slide is an example of a topic students see in our class. Students receive the topic weeks in advance so that as they're reading, they can always have this in the back of their mind and think about what different sources will help them to plan their essay and to prove what they're trying to write about. So then they plan, they write, and they revise their essays in order to answer the prompt. And then this slide includes a recent example of an English style writing. So first, students filled in the graphic organizer to plan their writing. So they had to come up with their thesis statement, come up with their evidence and how they would defend that evidence. And then they would actually draft their paragraph. So on the right is a draft of a paragraph. And then I'll give them feedback and pass it back to them. And then they make changes based on that feedback, trying to improve their writing every time. Ultimately, blending vocabulary, reading, and writing instruction has been our focus in order to help students feel more confident in their literacy skills across the curriculum. Thank you for your time, and we will now stand for questions.
Board members, questions, comments? Mr. Lee.
Thank you, President Hager. I love these combined classes. So can you maybe explain to me how this differs from American Pageant? Is it something you mirrored and brought it down to ninth grade, or?
Yes, absolutely. So that's a part of our inspiration was American Pageant. So we saw a lot of the connections between what they were doing in global studies, like studying the Russian Revolution, and then I was in my English classroom teaching Animal Farm. And it just seemed to make a lot of sense to bring those together. But yes, it certainly mirrors the idea of American Pageant.
Yeah, it's fantastic. My brother, being a retired teacher, I saw his grammar go up by leaps and bounds because of Mary Palmer. So it was shocking. But yeah, no. But really, my kids have gone through pageant, and my brother, having taught it for many years, I'm just a big fan. I think it makes a lot of sense. So thanks for what you do in the presentation. I appreciate it.
Mrs. Peterson.
All right, thanks, Mr. Hager or President Hager, and thanks, ladies, for bringing me back. You know, obviously, anytime that we're talking about literacy and secondary English, it warms my heart. I think my question is actually maybe more for Rachel or Mary, but just wondering, and maybe you guys, because first of all, I just appreciated all of what you shared, and would want to echo Mr. Lee's comments about the way that it's modeled, kind of after American Pageant, and seeing the similarities. But my wonder about the Aspire course, and maybe you can start, and if they need to back up, is obviously it had really good participation. Is that going to continue? Are we, you guys obviously took it and ran with it with a course. Is there more of an expectation for additional secondary folks to participate? Was it one and done, or are we going to continue to offer it, throughout for other teachers to maybe learn from you two?
So this course and opportunity came through. We took it through SEEK, the Education Association on the eastern side of the state. It was funded in part with CLSD grant money, and so now that is no more, I don't know as far as if a formal course will continue, but I definitely think the learning that happened from the members that took it will definitely continue to spread throughout the district. I don't know, to be honest with you, if SEEK is offering it again or if it's an opportunity that could be just taken on their own. But this was work that started with the CLSD grant. So we wanted to take advantage of that, we had great response and a good experience.
Thank you so much for that clarification. Well done, ladies.
Mr. Eastgate.
Just wanted to say thank you. American Pageant, like many have already said, was one of my most favorite classes by far in my time. So thanks for being innovators, being willing to look at how you could get that going at the freshman level. And please pass along a thanks to those who maybe you had to, I don't know about convince, but at least encourage to allow you guys to do that. Just appreciate that we have educators like you guys that are willing to say, hey, we think we have a way to do this better and help kids learn in maybe a different way than they are right now. So just very much appreciate you. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you guys for putting the time in and coming to present tonight. The one thing that I wrote down too, kind of echoing some of the things that other board members have mentioned, I'm going to use this one at home. We'll see if it gets my boys to read a little bit more. That reading is not just an English thing, and how important it is across all disciplines to have the ability to read and comprehend, and how important that is. So appreciate what you guys do. Thank you. Item 4 is public comment. The board recognizes the central role parents play in the education of their children and supports active parent involvement in the education process. The board's practice of public comment reflects and aligns with policy BCBA and the spirit of its intent. For classroom issues, it's best to follow the chain of command: teacher, principal, assistant superintendent, superintendent. For district issues, please reach out to Dr. Fosnot. If you do speak tonight, we simply ask that you be responsible, be helpful, and be respectful. Our BPS students deserve to have adults model the expectations we have for them. Groups are urged to select one spokesperson. Individuals will be limited to no more than 4 minutes and will be notified with 30 seconds left to conclude their remarks. The board will not debate issues as presented, but will take such matters under advisement. With that, please stand and approach the podium if you wish to speak tonight. We've got a person there, so if you could state your name and the agenda item that you'll be speaking about for the records.
And my agenda item is from the last month, and I was not, or our last meeting, I wasn't able to be here. Microphone. Am I here? Turn on. Okay. Okay, my name is Hannah McDonald, and my agenda item was on the last meeting agenda, so pursuant to policy, I could come to this meeting and address that because I had prior engagements last time. I just wanted to read a statement to the board. Good evening. My name is Hannah McDonald. I served as a speech-language pathologist in this district for 7 years, and I am also a parent of young children in this school system, a business owner, and a nationally recognized curriculum developer whose work is used by all 50 states, schools across the United States, and internationally. I'm here to place documented facts and lived professional experience into public record regarding workplace conditions that are driving staff out of the district. Over time, my working conditions became unsafe from a mental health standpoint. For more than 2 decades, the American Speech Language Hearing Association, our governing body, has provided guidance on responsible workload and caseload practices. That guidance was repeatedly advocated for, but was ignored. As a result, workloads failed to reflect student complexity at schools. For example, a student seen twice monthly for fluency maintenance is counted the same as a high-support, non-speaking student requiring 4 days a week of one-to-one services. These are the same in the eyes of the district when we look at numbers. This created a workload that was foreseeably unsustainable. As leadership became more distant, concerns were minimized or left unaddressed. Reporting pathways were unclear, follow-up was inconsistent, and meaningful change did not occur. The building-level special ed team leads absorbed increasing responsibilities without authority or protection, which allowed continuing isolation, unhealthy power dynamics, and escalating hostility. Although the special education building coordinator and building administrators were aware of these conditions, support at my building, specifically team dynamics, remained minimal and inconsistent. As these conditions continued, my anxiety disorder significantly worsened. I experienced a sustained state of distress tied directly to workplace stressors that were repeatedly raised and not addressed. During one meeting, a colleague above my station that I had previously trusted raised her voice, struck the table, and told me it doesn't matter what you have to say. I was not allowed to speak. My panic attacks increased in frequency and continue to persist, particularly when I enter a school building or reflect on my work in the schools. I requested support from Ms. Geiger. She advised me she'd follow up the next week. No follow-up occurred. 5 days later, I had to have my performance review with this person. My performance was exemplary, as it was in all 7 years. During the same period, I was made aware of a statement by a coworker expressing a desire to harm me. This was reported through appropriate channels and dismissed without follow-up, further escalating my fear for personal safety. In an effort to remain employed and protect my health, I requested to work 3 days per week, scheduled as 3 consecutive days. This was not a request to do less work, it was a request for sustainability. As a parent of 3 young children, I know my habits, my work habits. I overextend, and I remain at work beyond healthy limits. A 4-day recovery period was a mental health necessity and endorsed by my psychologist. An accommodation was offered, but it did not address the medical and functional need I identified. I was told the request was not in the best interest of students.
30 seconds.
I reviewed publicly available school board agendas. At this time last year, the district recorded 14 resignations. As of today, including the 7 resignations that are recorded in the agenda, that number is 32. That's a 129% increase. According to your own records, through my work, I've collaborated with researcher Fung Palafox, now a mentor and colleague. Her work reinforces a simple truth. For every professional supporting students in high-demand roles, leadership choices either sustain that person or push them toward burnout. My resignation was not a lack of dedication. It was the predictable outcome of prolonged inaction. The data is clear, the pattern is clear. What happens next is a matter of leadership and public record. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Seeing no one else with that, public comment is closed. Moving on to item 5, monitoring district operations, R21, academic achievement, literacy. Dr. Johnson.
Thank you, President Hager, members of the school board. Today, it's our pleasure to talk about literacy. It's tough to follow a great crew, but again, knowing that what was presented earlier regarding literacy, and again, I like that reading is not just an English thing, it's an everyone's thing, right? So I think that what you have before you, we marked as making reasonable progress with exception. However, we note that a couple of these are baseline, but I'd ask, and as we go through them, some of it's related to ACT and some other new testing. It does reflect, though, that we are doing exceptionally well compared to the state in years past. So that's part of the reason that we bring that forward, although it looks like there's only a couple that are at making reasonable progress. There's a few with exception, but those baselines also historically represent areas where we've outperformed. So that was part of that determination as we get into that. So taking a look at this, you heard a little bit about the Aspire training, and we all have the work that we continue doing around standards-based education and learning that's referencing throughout that. We'll take a look here as we get into the first few measures, and there you'll see, as we take a look at the NDSA, we see that we've added grade 10 now in the high school. We've done that for the first time that last year, again, making reasonable progress. We took a look at some of the subgroups. Again, we're always liking to not only look overall, but dive in and have those peeling back the onion layers a little bit to see where we have room for growth or where maybe we have some outposts of excellence within that. So we're always trying to take that look there. These next two indicators are ones that I'm talking about with ACT regarding English and in the area of reading. And you'll note that those are all green there for the past historical, but these are both listed as baseline now because we no longer have that state data available to us. So we've tried to represent it new, and we can work with you and the board and the wishes that you have and how we might best represent that. But because we don't have that comparability, we brought what we had for you, which was the number of students we brought. So, for example, 228 students took the ACT, and of that, 76% passed the English at the minimum level of the benchmark for 18, which would be deemed college ready. Then we took a look at the reading with 228 students, and again, 63. You might say, why are we doing so well in English and not in reading? This is where we all have to sometimes just tell you what you're looking at, right? So for those that might look at this, you can see then in the analysis, note that the cut score for the benchmark on English is at an 18, and for reading it's at a 22. So it's 4 points higher. So that's, in my world, the explainable reason for the difference. Again, reading is reading. It's not just an English thing, as we were told earlier this evening. Likewise, this is highly correlated with those that might pursue history, political science, areas that are typically more seen as social studies extension in the college. Are you ready to be able to enter and do the reading that's necessary to be successful in those areas? Then we take a look at indicator 4, and again, we're just taking a look at the growth and the in this we're looking at the percentage of students that are proficient. And so we take in K1 the Ames Web, 2 through 8 is the MAP, and then the STAR assessment. So these are just proficiency, not growth. I apologize for misspeaking. So looking at the percentage that are hitting proficiency. And you might say, wow, high school, nice job there. That's with an asterisk for us because they were renormed nationally. And I'm going to reiterate a statement that many of you around the board have heard me say before. We fared better during COVID than the nation did. Just being honest, I'd love to come in and swoop in and take a bow for something that, seems extraordinary. But the reality is, with the renorming, we've dug in and we feel like our students are pretty similar, maybe a little bit of slight uptick, but that 30% jump is really reflected of the new norm cuts that were put out nationally, not necessarily a huge swing in that. Of course, it's in the right direction that we would want, but we're looking at proficiency there on indicator 4. And on indicator 5, I apologize again for the mix-up there. The grade targets are wrong. They needed to be shifted by a year, and with your permission, if you'd accept it with the indication that the 21-22 would become 22-23, so on and so forth. So the last year would be 24-25. I apologize for missing that there, but we are looking now at growth. And there, we're within about a 2%, just under a 2% decline. But I've shared with you before, historically, the NWA, the MAP test, about 50%, it's designed for about 50% to be able to make the cut score of their growth or not. So we're hovering right at that. We're on the wrong side of that 50%, but it's right about where we're at. So again, we have some grade levels that are exceeding that and a few where we probably need to make a little bit more effort, and hopefully we close the gap year to year, but also those are real students. And that's what we've talked about before. Behind all these instructional strategies, behind all this data, are faces of sons and daughters, grandchildren, nieces and nephews. There's someone, it's a real student. So we need to figure out, and who can best do that work is the teachers and the support staff at the building level that are working collaboratively together to be able to try to figure out how they can help support each student along the way. And we look at our subgroups as well on indicator 6. And again, there's some areas there we're really happy about that, and it's a few areas where we have to dig in and take a look. Again, those do vary year to year because sometimes with that inflow and outflow of students, we see that. So we've got a little bit different norming going on. On the last page there, on indicator 7, this reflects again the 2.5 for K5 grades. So the grade is determined by a standard score of 2.5, or at the secondary level, the equivalent of a B. And again, those do commute. Go back and forth, can computate, and we can make that change. But you'll see that we would put forward that we've met it in K through 5, we've met and exceeded at the middle school, and we grew. So again, that's why it's in kind of that green there. But we are hoping that with the new adoption of standards that we'll continue to see that. We did put forward that this is still our standards from year to year, though we continue to implement with new state-adopted standards. So it's not exactly a comparison year to year, but it's still the English is the English standards for the most part there. At this point, we know that there's continued work that we need to do, and we're always ever present. We would propose, again, making reasonable progress with the exception, again, noting the few changes that I would make on the years on that one indicator, and also know that we continue to be intentional about improving our core, and what that means just everyone. Like, we need to make sure that's the best learning experience, and that those that are doing the lift are not just your English or your reading time. So we understand that that's an everyone on deck whenever, however it looks like. You know, you presented some examples here, and many have heard of AVID and the other strategies there. Again, these are all strategies for all, not just for some. But we also know that there is some work done with interventions. Mr. Barnhart and his crew, there's some reading strategies and reading teachers that are helping out, and we have some reading strategies at the middle school and the high school. Again, trying to provide those interventions along with others that might get specially designed instruction. So all these bring us that we care about that kid. If you feel that your son or daughter needs a little extra support, let's have that conversation. Come talk to the building level principal, and we'll figure out who can best sit around the table. And we have plenty of personnel that would, gladly talk about what extra supports we might be able to do, because we want to join you in that parent partnership with the school and with the teachers. So at this point, I'd stand for any questions that you have.
Board members, questions, comments? Mrs. Peterson.
Thanks, President Hager, and thanks, Dr. Johnson. I think that sometimes, like reports like this, first of all, thank you for putting it together, and I appreciate, kind of looking at the comparison, but also I think more importantly for the public, just to be able to read some of the caveats, but also the wins that we have. But I think that whenever we're trying at the system level to compare from year to year, we have to recognize, I really liked what you said when these are actual students with actual faces but behind. So when we roll it up to the district level and we're hearing this report, I'm more important not necessarily to compare what was last year. It's like what's happening with those kids and that continuous improvement. And I feel like that was really clear in your in the overall report with some of the caveats, but also recognizing the work that you guys are doing and showcased with the teachers that were here today, and then just what I hope is happening with across the district with the instructional coaching and the kind of the continuous improvement mindset. So just appreciate the report. No questions, but I know there's a lot here in terms of the changes that are happening at the state level, the district level with different data sets, and I think that's I appreciate that the explanations are kind of within this report for us, but also for the public.
Yeah, if I would just one other, giving a concrete example to your point about the students that are different. We have nearly 14% mobility, meaning in and out from year to year. So that's perhaps 1 in 7, if my quick math is working, 1 in 7 students was not here last year. So we need to think about that too, is that even when we're comparing groups, which we do, and you get the ebbs and flows, it evens off, but they are different students, so we need to meet them where they're at. But to that point, that's what we're here for. Those students, whether they've been here since kindergarten or their whole lives, or whether or not they entered last month, we're going to take them where they are and figure out how to support them as we go forward. Thank you for the question or statement.
Mr. Eastgate.
Thanks, President Hager. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Johnson, for the report. And my question may go to Mr. Barnhart possibly, or somebody with English background, which we have a couple in the room as well. But I just noticed on indicator 5 in particular, you have 3rd and 4th grade, it's probably the biggest drop off, and they're pretty consistent right there. And so it's a little bit in the weeds, but I just wonder, is 3rd and 4th grade a time when maybe are kids stepping into harder, more chapter books? Is there any kind of evidence, I guess, that you would have that you could have? I'm going to look backwards too here.
Yeah, I don't have the mic, but you want me to go up there?
Whatever you want.
Yeah, I just think that when you think about those kiddos in third and fourth pop out to me as well. But when you think about their skills, you got foundational skills, writing, letter, sound, fluency, and then you have deeper skills, such as comprehension, vocabulary. And then when you take those fourth graders, went all the way back when COVID hit in 2021, when we lost almost a trimester, and then we moved into the next year, and we lost quite a bit of time at the front end. Plus, with all those students that fell into positive COVIDs and then contact tracing, they didn't get their tier 1 core at the early ages. And I think that has a tremendous impact on some of the scores that you're seeing here right now too.
So not necessarily a historical, we see this big drop in 3rd. Well, that's kind of what I was wondering. Yeah, they really had it going there, and our highest scores, if I remember right.
They just didn't have those conversations in classrooms, nor did they, even when you think about comprehension, background knowledge, fiction versus nonfiction,
Mhm.
they probably didn't have all of those texts.
Sure.
Because we were really working on the priority skills for kids, and then background knowledge, being out in the community, having different experiences when everyone was locked down. I don't think some of those kids got some of those experiences as well.
Gotcha. Thank you very much, Mr. Barnhart. Appreciate that. Mr. Barnhart had that question for me. So beyond that, I guess just more of sometimes we have ponderings, right, that we think about as we hear this. And President Hager alluded to it earlier during our focus on success, but the idea of being a lover of books and reading myself, and how do we get kids to do that? And it's like, sometimes as a parent, you're hitting your head against the wall feeling like, man, I should have made my kids read more. But I just always wonder if there's ways. We talk a lot about student choice and different pathways, and as Focus Success talked about, they'll bring in a book that maybe they're learning about in history. And I just wonder if there's other opportunities like that within our educational system. If a kid has an interest, that they can also have a book that's paired along with it. I don't know. I just put it out there, I guess, as a way. Maybe there's programs out there already, but where we're pushing for kids to want to read.
Yeah, I think throughout, I'm pretty proud of the experience that my own kids have experienced, and perhaps you have that. Where there is choice, there's opportunities for students to follow their interests, not only with Misty Frink, our library media services, and all the librarians, a lot of choice and opportunity there. But also that if the standard is here, there might be options for whether you're finding choices within the classroom. But then there's also sometimes where it's good for us all to be able to talk around a similar theme or the exact same text. And so I think some of that exists. Obviously, we've talked and shared a little bit about Empowered Ed programs where you can find what text might resonate with you most. But I think that occurs far more often than we realize at times. And so I think our teachers are always looking for opportunities to provide that choice, while yet also saying sometimes this is a text that is worthy of us all reading together. Last thing I'd say with that, I think to your point is, I was always the wisdom of Sarah Wesleyan Brown. She was a National Teacher of the Year, and she was from Iowa when I was down there at the time. And she used this kind of phrase that sometimes we read books because they're windows and mirrors. Sometimes it's a window into someone else's lived experience, and sometimes it's a mirror for us to hold up and reflect on our own life. And so there's a benefit of reading text, fiction and nonfiction, that present both of those opportunities for young readers. And I think as we all can model reading and be able to do that at home. Last night my wife was reading a book and I was watching the Super Bowl, but my kids see her reading some of that there along. Again, how we model that at home can carry over, but then also there's sometimes where we are still showing that we're still learners, right? So you may walk by someone's classroom in elementary or a high school, and it's like, what am I reading right now? And so I think that we're always continuing to be learners, and that's a good thing to model.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. I would see none. Dr. Frostnut.
My apologies, I stepped away for a bit, so you might have referenced indicator 2 and 3. Did you have any comments on that? The 228, did you mention that to the board?
Yes,
Okay.
I
So
explain.
I think, just so you're aware, we're going to keep putting that in there in your math and literacy report for a while, but it might need some adjustment in that indicator, at least how we report it, because of the change in our kids not being required or being asked to take the ACT. So we'll let that play out a little bit. So as you see that indicator change, or the report within that indicator change a little bit. So, and the comment about reading, Ms. Treesgate, yeah, it's critical skill. But interestingly enough, I'm in a podcast next week about social media impact on kids, technology's impact on kids. Sent a bunch of questions out to teachers today. Probably received a dozen bits of feedback on that. I was trying to garner their insights into their view on social media and technology use. Several, over a handful, reference technology as it's reducing attention span, grit to read text, because we just read in short snippets anymore. To actually engage in a deep text takes endurance, reading endurance. And several educators mentioned that, like the negative impact of some of our screen time. For all of us, really, to have that endurance to read a volume. So interesting feedback from teachers today. But.
Thanks, Dr. Frostnut. With Mr. Lee.
President Hager, with respect to R2 academic achievement literacy, I move that the board accept the report as making reasonable progress with noted exceptions.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Dr. Scher.
Lee,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Presky,
Yes.
Eastgate,
Yes.
Hager.
Yes. Down to item 6, matters reserved for board action. Academic achievement mathematics, the revisions. Second reading, I don't know, Dr. Frostnut, if you have anything to add from.
I do not, President Hager. No recommendations. Obviously, my recommendation is to approve second reading, but no changes since last time.
And I would move to approve the revised coherent governance results indicators, R2.1 academic achievement mathematics, as presented for the second and final reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Dr. Scher.
Peterson,
Yes.
Presky,
Yes.
Eastgate,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Hager.
Yes. B, school board members, I can't talk. Board member school visits. I think I'm the only one who has one tonight, so I'm just going to jump right into it. So I had the privilege of going to Liberty Elementary School, Liberty Rockets, on Friday afternoon, so it's fairly fresh. Upon arrival, Principal Haugen made some time so we could kind of sit down and talk all the hot topics going across the district, bell times, school congestions, traffic in the morning, those types of things. Some of the other things we talked about too as the day went along, different specialties, call it specialty teachers in the district, and how they share kind of knowledge across different schools, trying different things, best practices, what works, what doesn't work, what's worked for them. So it was kind of interesting discussion around that. So for me, this was a first. So I got to have a tour from Emma Jo and Tegan. So their responsibilities for these two young ladies is to show new kids around the school. So I'm a big new kid for the day. They did a phenomenal job. They knew their school inside and out, and you could tell they'd kind of practiced and thought about what they were going to say, when they were going to say it, because you'd walk into a certain area, and then they would kind of look at each other. One would start talking, we'd walk a little further, they'd look at each other, the next one would start talking. They did a phenomenal job taking me around the school. As we were wandering around the school, of course, I asked, favorite subject in school. Both of them said math. Tried to compare it with gym or recess, still math. So pretty impressive that they're both really into math. So as we were doing the tour, they have on the wall there, either by class or by grade, they can win different awards each month. And the different awards are things like keeping their classroom clean. So the janitors would hand out an award. They'd pick the classroom that was the cleanest for the month, or the lunchroom staff would determine which class had been the best at keeping the lunchroom clean and doing those sorts of things. So they hand out those awards monthly. And then one that Emma Jo was most excited about is, of course, as the Liberty Rockets, you're going to have each class launch a rocket to see who can shoot it the highest, and her class happened to win it. So she was pretty proud of that. One other thing that was kind of fun, we got to the end of the tour, and Tegan had mentioned her last name. I said, "What is your dad's name?" Turns out I played baseball with her dad out at the University of Mary, and I know her dad well. So it's kind of funny, these kind of small connections that we have across the district. So after the tour with the kids, again, something new for me. I got to be a part of the Woot Woot Wagon. So what this was is Principal Haugen, she has a cart full of snacks, like anything you could think of, and a cooler full of drinks, sodas, waters, that kind of stuff. And they have a boom box, and they play this thing really loud, and they walk around. It's kind of a teacher appreciation. They can come out, grab a snack, and on a Friday afternoon, I heard a few comments about, "Oh, yeah, I could have used some caffeine right now." And as they were grabbing a soda, they tried to talk me into dancing as a part of this going down the hallway. But thinking of you guys, I mean, that would be embarrassing for you guys to have to hear back on that. Somebody would have probably recorded it. So I didn't do that. But it was kind of fun to watch the kids as the boombox was coming down the hallway. They would just start dancing in place, certain kids. So it was fun. Towards the end, down the last hall, as we were kind of wrapping up the Woot Woot Wagon, happened to see one of my nieces in her classroom waving away. I didn't even notice her. Waved to her. It was great. And then the very last classroom Miss Haugen went into, my other niece, kindergartner, was in there. Well, Miss Haugen had just received a hug from her. I came in and I got a bewildered look like, wow, this is totally out of place. Like, why is he standing in my classroom right now? So at best I got a hi, and then we moved on. It was a great visit. The two kids that showed me around, Tegan and Emma Jo, did a fantastic job. They know their school so well. Had a lot of fun that Friday afternoon. It was a good time. So that's my Liberty visit. With that, we'll move to item 7, the consent agenda. What are the wishes of the board?
President Hager, I'd move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Dr. Scher?
Presky,
Yes.
Eastgate,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Hager.
Yes. Item 8, superintendent's report, long-range facility plans. Dr. Foster.
Yeah, I'm going to take a little time this evening to kind of give a little background for viewers and yourself. Some of this is going to be very repetitious for you board members, but providing a little bit just in case we have new viewers tonight to catch them up on where we are with our long-range plan. And then I'll kind of define the scope of what I intend to present on one of the forthcoming slides. So for those of you that are maybe haven't engaged in or haven't realized it, this is really all stemming from our long-range facility plan. Dr. Barnhart, on the next page, just if you want to find it, I'm going to provide the link. It's on the website. If you go to our strategic plan, you'll find our long-range facility plan on that page, and just kind of read, again, directing people back there to be aware and engaged in this process. My charge tonight, I think our charge tonight as a team, was to prepare a targeted list of priorities along with a plan and how we intend to address them in a timely fashion. Some of that may come tonight. You're going to get part of that. And over the next few meetings, I will continue to lay that out for you as we're continuing to work on that process. But to help, again, for people who are maybe just engaging with it, the long-range facility plan has one component deals with deferred maintenance. Those are long-standing projects, fixes that we need to do just to maintain any property. We have over 2 million square feet of property inside of BPS, so it's extensive. Kind of just like your home. At some point, the furnace needs replaced, the water heater breaks down, or you need to replace a sidewalk. Those things happen for BPS too, and they're outlined in our long-range facility plan and are part of the work we just did to update it. I just want to remind people too that that was done with experts in the field, people who are trained and skilled, and every day they work on those systems to help us understand where they were in their life cycle and where they needed to be on that ranking order from a long-range priority to immediate priority, greens through reds. In a more detailed version, if you haven't engaged in this document, you will find a detailed assessment of every facility and building that we have in the district, and those deferred maintenance items will be ranked kind of by color order and descriptions. And to make the recommendations this evening, we've reviewed all those. We went back to the document, looked at them in detail to say what's the most important things, what kind of does this naturally, but to what level does it make sense to work on these projects within each of the schools. The other thing that we took into account to build the priorities this evening, or recommendations on the priorities, is the stakeholder feedback. If you remember, we had those meetings in the fall. That was part of what we did during the rewrite, the renewal of our long-range facility plan. So we took that input as well to help formulate our priorities this evening. What I'd like to share with everybody, including you board members, is I've had some people say, well, you haven't been doing anything. What have you not been doing in the district for X number of years that you have this these deferred maintenance and programmatic needs? I want to tell you, I want to share with people in the audience that are listening that we have been doing work across BPS to address the facility needs that we have. We've listed some examples here for you. The renovations of Northridge. I was actually just speaking with a parent today that talked about her child's experience at Northridge and how it changed once the district put a investment of dollars in there to upgrade and renew Northridge, and how much it was improved. But listing others, the work at Legacy, at Lincoln, at Silver Ranch and Elk Ridge, because Silver Ranch and Elk Ridge were funded from your building fund to do that work. The Hughes renovations, which many of you have toured and seen, was not only district dollars, but it was also a partner with one of our strong business partners in the community, Sanford. The CT Center, which the picture is shown there that we opened last year, was again a cross-section of business partnerships that helped make that a reality, along with state grant funding to help make that happen. And just for awareness, Dr. Scher provided me over the last 4 years, we're averaging $3.7 million a year coming out of our funds, general fund, building fund, just to do maintenance of buildings. It is it's that many square feet of roofs and floors and fields and grass and all those other things. It takes a lot of dollars. So we continue to invest in it. I think the long-range facility plan just helps articulate how big that need is. And I, again, encourage people to take a look at it. We are planning at the next board meeting to have Dr. Scher present to you in the Focus of Success a more detailed description of what we've been working on, what the needs are, and what we've been trying to tackle over the last 5 years. So you can look forward to that. So that leads into, I guess, our recommendations tonight for you to consider. Is we really believe that the district needs to focus on what would be our moderate through immediate priorities. They're ranked that way for a reason. It's not magic to figure out what the rankings are, but looking at the needs that were presented in the plan, talking about each individual building, looking at what those specific needs are, and then taking our community input that we received this fall. There was very strong support that we need to address these needs, and that's our recommendation to you, is we need to focus on those needs. Why the range in dollars? If you go to the next slide, Mr. Barnhart, I think we had projected in the plan that those tiers of needs, just yellow through orange, is about $37 million. I'm not ready to give you an exact number yet because we're working on it. We're working on it with local contractors and architects to try to ascertain what we think that is. But that's a today number. That's a number that we projected, that $37 million. If we say that hey, it's going to take a couple years to get this work done, because I'm just telling you, there's no way that we'll get all that done in a snap. So it's going to take years to get this work done if we focus on it. We need to put an inflationary factor in there. So right now we're projecting a range 37 to 43 million to address just those three buckets of needs in regard to deferred maintenance. And we'll tighten that up for you and bring that back to you in the next coming board meetings so you can see that a little tighter as we work those numbers. So that's in the deferred maintenance bucket. Programmatic needs are next. You've been aware of those. To try to evaluate those, because they fall into a little bit different need than something you can just say, well, that has a life cycle, because a lot of these are things that are not existing in our buildings. They're not part of our buildings. You can't go and say, well, that boiler was put in 25 years ago. It's at end of life cycle. So we try to develop a criteria that we're going to evaluate the programmatic needs on. And this is the priority areas we felt we needed to focus on as a district. And the first one was programmatic needs that fall into safety, security, and student well-being. Those for us as a definition are things like secure entrances. We have secure entrances in every building. You're going to fob in, or you're going to buzz in to every entrance that you're going to see. What we find is a gap is some schools lack line of sight. They don't have a really easy way to make sure that that visitor comes through and is physically checked before they actually get entry to the building. A lot of you we experience entrances that are perfect. You walk into Legacy, you go right by a secretary, and there's a process to go through the office and check in and kind of be welcomed. Some of our elementary schools don't have that, just due to the fact of when they were built. They were built before that time. So that's important to us in that area. What we're also putting into safety and security is things like parking, pedestrian safety. We've heard a lot of concern about pull-up loops, bus loops this year as we talk to parents. We've also heard needs for additional student support service areas, that particularly when we talk about student mental health and our outside service providers that are now coming in and helping serve our children, having a space for them. Again, schools weren't necessarily designed with that in mind when we were building them 30, 40 years ago, to have places for nurses and Sanford and West Central to come in and provide services to our kids. And another one is lighting. We've heard that from people too, particularly with the time change, bell time change, having a little bit better exterior lighting, particularly in our elementary schools. I would tell you, to me, safety, this area, security is a non-negotiable. That's one of the highest priorities for me. If we have needs here, we got to address those. That's why you'll be hearing that more, what my recommendations are. Aging facilities and infrastructure is the second bucket. That's a lot of roofs, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, warning systems, like upgrading fire warning system, those things. Also, actually in safety and security and student well-being, and this bucket is handicap accessibility. Could fit in both buckets, actually. It's so important. But we have schools that, we're physically carrying students and staff upstairs because they can't get to the other floors because of a disability or accessibility issues. That seems like an important issue that we need to address. Also, just modernizing some spaces. Again, that's that Northridge example. What you can do when you go in and you just upgrade the space, give it a new life, it's ready for another 50 years of service to the community. This category is about taking care of the investment that this community has already made in the facilities at neighborhood schools and the schools that we have. Equity of learning spaces is another bucket that we think is important. Classroom modernization and flexibility to ensure equitable, not necessarily identical learning spaces, but I guess philosophically, my view is you shouldn't, as a child, the accommodating the learning space, the size, the benefits of learning spaces that you have should not be dependent on what neighborhood you live in town. Not saying they have to be identical, but they should be more commensurate with each other. I think right now we see some spaces that are definitely not similar. lack of instructional spaces at certain parts of town, which then unfortunately lack the courses that kids can take, the options that kids can have. And really, your zip code, we're all about 2 zip codes, but your neighborhood should not determine what course offerings you get. You should really be able to get similar offerings and simple opportunities regardless of what school you attend. So that's a lot of it. And again, some of this is student support spaces. Kids with special education needs, disability needs, mental health, physical health care needs. I think that those all fall in there, along with fine arts. We've heard some concerns from staff or parents during our community meetings too about access to equitable fine arts spaces. You know, fine arts is a really important issue in this town. It's a really important theme in this town. It's great to have, but we got to make sure we can accommodate all those artists as they perform and work in our schools. So that's the third bucket. Fourth bucket, capacity and community growth. We do have some areas in town that are seeing some growth. We have some areas in town that are constricting, and it's how can we address schools that have several portables outside and growing. If a portable is temporary, are we living like that? Is our facilities embracing that's just a temporary fix? We should be making them a permanent fix if we really see that population, that building is going to remain constant for the next time period. Then why are we not addressing that? We should be making that those portables into full-time learning spaces for our kids. So we need to work on that, planning ahead. We want to be planning ahead for that capacity rather than reacting to it when it happens. And the last one is community use. This really isn't as much focused on the kids, you might say. It is kids, but we've heard a lot of comments from parents about things like after-school care. After-school care in a community is tight. One of the things that causes that tightness is when we work with our partners like Korea and Parks. They can only hold so many classes, so many sessions in a school because of the capacity we are limited by. So there are some opportunities there that if we feel that if we could work on some community spaces, we could increase capacity for some after-school programs, which would be, I think, beneficial to our community based on what we hear from our parents. They need to have more options, more capacity to get their kids into those programs instead of being on a wait list. So I think we can address some of that and not only address educational issues, but also support the community as well as we do that. So schools are a community hub, not just classrooms, and we know we need to respect that because our buildings are used from morning till night and way into the evening hours. And if you drive by, Mr. Hager, your comment on Liberty, I would guarantee you drive by there on a Saturday, the parking lot's full because that facility is being used 6 days a week, and some of them on 7 because they hold other community services, faith-based services. So, these are our buckets that we evaluated the programmatic on. And I guess to give an example, we went to Myrie, looked at the Myrie project. The Myrie project really didn't have any deferred maintenance because we as a district have looked at that before. You have seen the Myrie project before as a board years ago. We're rolling all the deferred maintenance up into one big project. Myrie needs a facelift. It needs some action. It needs to be some of their systems need to be upgraded. It needs to be modernized. Its list is long. And when you roll all that up, this is just an example of a programmatic page out of the long-range facility plan. So if you're looking at it, you can see what we're talking about. All those things roll up into what we see as a $7 million project to get Myrie where it should be. And if you applied that list of needs to the priorities that I just articulated, really 4 out of the 5 we see as needs for Myrie that fit into those other buckets. If you go to the next page there, Mr. Barnhart, we see that project checking 4 of those 5 boxes off as far as the priority buckets that we're talking about. And really, that's why we're supporting that project and others in the recommendations. So you have my deferred maintenance recommendation. The programmatic recommendation, we've taken those projects by school. We've provided the value for you, and that, again, that's a raw value today. It's not necessarily, we got to work on those numbers to tighten them up, but taking those projects and tried to put them into the priority buckets or use the priority buckets to validate that this is a project worth our time and energy, and why it's a needed work inside the district. So we're recommending additional 66 to 77 million in programmatic work that we need to just say, okay, if we're going to do it and it's important, how can we get it done? The last one that we don't have a number for yet, we heard, honestly, I didn't see this coming. This was from our community meeting when we were at the Century community meeting, very loud and clear. People, the parents that were there at that meeting, we need to do something with the fine arts spaces at Century. And we're absolutely comparing the auditorium space at Century to the expansion that was done at BHS a few years ago, the Legacy Auditorium, and then more importantly, they definitely pointed out the Mandan project as really exemplary examples of auditorium fine art spaces in our community that our kids can benefit from, and the stark comparison of where Century's at compared to those other three facilities. So I do not have a price yet for that. That's something we're working on if that's what we want to consider. But our recommendation would include that. We think that, okay, an auditorium space is worthy of our energy and time to believe that's a needed programmatic recommendation. So in totality, my recommendations tonight are the deferred maintenance that I presented in the slides. That's over 18 different sites in the district. The programmatic work extends over 19 different sites in the district. So it's a very large need across the district. But again, we're quite large. We have a lot of children in our school every day. We have a lot of community members in our schools every week, and we have a lot of space to take care of. So I guess if the board is seeing that you approve of this initial priority recommendation, there's still time for that to work on it, then it's Dr. Scheer and my charge to go out and probably come back to you, because we're not ready yet, but come back to you with how can we address these needs within our general fund and our building fund? Do we need additional funds? How do we make this happen? And what is our timeline? Do we think we can reasonably get that done for you, so you can see, set a goal, okay, we should have this done in this time period. So I would stand for any questions you may have.
Board members, questions, comments? Ms. Presky.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for all your work on this. I know this has been a lengthy process thus far, and we have a lot more work to do on this. But appreciate getting the input from the community, to hear what's important to our parents and students, and then to really go through and look at what the schools look like and what they really need. So really appreciate you going through it so thoroughly. And we all go to the schools, so we see what they are, hear about the needs. I absolutely believe the elevators are absolutely need to be at the top of the list. Hearing the stories of kids being carried upstairs or teachers not being able to teach because they can't get to their classrooms is really a shame. So, but bottom line, appreciate your work on this and look forward to working through it. Thank you.
Ms. Peterson.
Thanks, President Hager. And again, something that you had said right at the beginning of this, first of all, this isn't the first time we're seeing this long-range facilities plan, and it was interesting at the last workshop, we changed the title, but it's really, we've just been pushing it we've actually just adding to it, really, because although I really appreciated the $3.7 million a year that we are actually able to continue to chip away at some of those pieces, especially in that high priority, it doesn't allow us the amount of dollars to do some of these more extensive pieces. So I like how you've separated into programmatic, but really some of those are also included in some of that deferred maintenance. So that was I like that Myri example, but that really, just for the public, if you want to go to any of those tabs, I think that's really helpful. Obviously we have, and liked what Ms. Presky said, is that we've been in these schools, we've been hearing about it, we report out it when we do our school visits, although we get to talk about the fun things like, hopefully I'm going to be able to go to Sunrise's best week ever. You just got to go maybe dance your shoes off at at Liberty, and we talk a lot about some of the academic needs. I mean, every time that we're talking about budget, we talk about the number, and I might be getting it wrong, Dr. Scher, but like 85 to 87% of our budget is towards salary and benefits, which really only leaves a very narrow window to do all of this. And the fact that we've been able to do some of it with just without raising mills, and we've been able to build buildings, we've been able to add on when our growth demanded it, whether we're talking Lincoln or Legacy, or even just to do some of the programming that I know is there. You can't chip away. And if I chipped away in my own home at things that we want to do both cosmetically and just a little bit, you're going to do some things, but maybe I put new windows off because that's a huge expense. It's not going to take away the fact that I'm going to need to replace my windows at some point, even if I just replaced my linoleum a different day. So I feel like that's kind of what we've been doing. We've been chipping away and doing the things that we can't help because roofs are going to cave in or certain things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't needs that exist. So I've appreciated the extensive conversations that we've had really since the entire time that I've sat on the board, but also in some of the more stark workshops that we've had recently, and really appreciate this long-range facility plan that the operational excellence team has put together, or keep building on, and the community engagement. And I really just think the majority of it is we're going to have to figure out a way. So I'm looking forward to hearing that way.
So, Dr. Fosnot, are you just looking for a head nod to yes?
If you're giving me a head
keep
nod,
moving?
this is the right direction. We'll come back to you with kind of using this scope. Really, this is just helping define the scope. We'll come back to you with a more actionable plan. This will take us a while. I mean, I know Dr. Scher has been meeting with contractors and architects daily to try to get that done because we think that work's important. So it's just going to take us a while. We can't get it done, but we'll come back with a more actionable plan. And thank you for referring to that. I mean, your comments, Board Member Peterson. I mean, if we all have a budget. We all have a family budget. School has a budget. If you're constantly having to fix the reds, you don't keep up with the greens and yellows that if you just addressed them in a timely fashion, they wouldn't become reds. You wouldn't get there. But when you're constantly trying to fix the reds and keep ahead of things, it just makes it a challenge. And I think that's the challenge we're in, and particularly in an environment where we are wanting to spend more to retain high-quality employees and stuff. There's not a lot of extra dollars there to keep up with some of this work. So thank you. But that is all.
Well, thank you, Dr. Fosnot and Dr. Scher, for all your work on this. Kind of look forward to the next steps, kind of seeing what you guys bring to us next. With that, all agenda items have been considered. I declare this meeting adjourned.